Hi, I'm Renee Berry, and I'm a Partner Development Manager with the Global Startup Program here at AWS. We're in the studio today with Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Rhee. I'm the founder and CEO of Porter. Porter is a DevOps automation platform that helps companies on AWS automate lots of the standard DevOps tasks they might encounter, like managing CI, maintaining infrastructure like Kubernetes, and simplifying the developer experience for people on AWS who might not have a ton of cloud expertise.
Can you tell me a little bit about how Porter was founded and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually started as a remote development company, meaning we were doing things like syncing the local file system to development infrastructure. We didn't touch production stuff at all, pretty intentionally in the beginning. But we kept hearing from the users that we had that all of their actual DevOps pain points, all the time that they felt like they were wasting, was in production. And in particular, a consistent theme that we kept hearing was people felt as though they were really eager to take advantage of the cost and performance benefits of AWS, but there was just kind of so much choice and optionality that they had and customizability on that platform that for some of them it was a bit daunting, honestly, without a DevOps expert or a person with a lot of cloud expertise. And so a lot of these companies were resorting to platforms that provided a paved road, things that were fully hosted, like Heroku, Render, other platforms as a service. And so we saw an opportunity to basically deliver a same or similar paved road within the user's own AWS account so that they could have a little more control from day one. And so now today at Porter, we work with hundreds of startups ranging from seed to growth stage. About 30% of the last Y Combinator batch used us, and even a few public companies actually that have a few DevOps engineers like GetAround. So just a wide gamut of clients.
Nice. What do people love about Porter?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the developer experience, if I had to pick one thing. In particular, again, because they understand that the performance and the reliability comes from just these AWS managed services, the only thing that we find them hurting for really is, again, if you don't have a cloud expert on the team or a suite of DevOps engineers to help you, just be able to navigate that stuff more easily and kind of piece it all together. And yeah, with Porter, we try to provide that impeccable developer experience on top of those really reliable AWS services. And it's kind of the best of both worlds for companies at that stage.
Can you tell us about how Porter is enabling scalability for startups?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for a lot of startups, especially the really early stage ones, scalability is this weird thing where you need to prepare for it. But sometimes it can feel like a bit of a champagne problem because you're just trying to survive to the next day. But with Porter, we make scalability effortless. It is literally as easy as just getting your MVP set up. And so that way, companies at any stage are just ready to hit hyperscale mode if it ever happens. And they can also just immediately leverage things like the incredible AWS credits they get as startups on the platform. And really, it's a combination of all these things that allows Porter to service that user base, I think, so well.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of those customer stories?
Yeah. So the consistent theme with our users is, again, that they're looking to focus their engineering on product and not the kind of generic infrastructure heavy lifting that you might encounter. That can come in all sorts of ways, though. So one particular user that comes to mind is HomeLight, which is an enterprise that was on Heroku for a long time, over a decade, and actually actively looking to move to AWS almost that entire time. The main obstacle, though, was that they had this really simplified developer experience within Heroku, and they were a little overwhelmed by the prospect of having to do potentially a ton of DevOps engineering because they didn't have that expertise internally. And when they reached out to different people for quotes on how much it would cost to migrate to AWS, they were literally getting quoted upwards of $1 million for a couple-month project to move everything over. Using Porter, they were able to migrate for $10K. And to this day, we were able to check all the boxes that they were looking for, giving them a similar abstracted developer experience, not having to worry about all that infra overhead, but getting to run everything within their own AWS account. And now they're able to also leverage just a ton of other AWS services like RDS and other offerings on AWS.
That almost sounds too good to be true. So were they like in shock when they got that first quote with the consulting partner and then they saw your quote? Like, how did they know, okay, this is the right decision for us outside of the price? Like, because the quality, I would think, might be in question because the price is so different.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we've kind of realized for a lot of people it almost does sound too good to be true. And so as part of our process, the most important thing is always just initially building some trust. And on a kind of nominal or even just symbolic fee, offering to migrate a full staging environment for them first, before they're even committed to anything, before they're even dead set on migrating everything fully over to AWS. That way we can show them, hey, your apps can run here. You can get the developer experience you're looking for. You can de-risk all these concerns that you might have and use that to move forward with confidence after evaluating it for a bit. So fortunately, we're not asking our users to make a leap of faith, completely blind into an unknown environment. There's a lot of opportunity to see what that future could look like before actually making the decision to cut fully over. So that's what we did with HomeLight.
Nice.
Yeah.
And this sounds like a migration story where if customers are thinking about it, but they're not sure, there's like a clear path and it's very cost effective with great user experience with Porter, right?
Yep.
I know you have like other case studies that show some different use cases because I feel like Porter can be a DevOps engineer's best friend with like it helps them do more with less. So what other stories do you think might be interesting for the community to hear about?
Absolutely. So it's not just migrations, certainly, where we get our users. A lot of our customers are people who are already on AWS, many of them with DevOps engineers running stuff very successfully. But they still, again, feel this pain point where in order to reach the next level of scale, there is just more resources that are required on the infra and DevOps side. And so one customer that comes to mind that I think perfectly fits that use case is Getaround. So this is a public ride-sharing company that runs B2C kind of infrastructure across 8 different countries, very high volume, very high traffic. And they're able to do all that with only 3 people on the infra and DevOps side, which is just remarkable. And on one hand, just an incredible testament to their team, but also I believe it's largely been possible because they've been able to partner with us. And so if you look at their team, their lead SRE knows a ton of stuff about Kubernetes and all the ins and outs of infra and DevOps engineering. But they're able to leverage Porter to take care of all that undifferentiated kind of Kubernetes maintenance and management that they would otherwise have had to bring on maybe 3, 4 more DevOps engineers in order to maintain across, again, this global production cluster. And so by offloading that kind of generic DevOps work, we tend to call it the infra plumbing, to us, they themselves are able to focus on the DevOps tasks that are really driving business goals, the things that are more idiosyncratic to their company. And so one thing I would really emphasize is it's not just that we're freeing up bandwidth for more engineering to go towards product, it's also within the DevOps team. There's just certain tasks that are going to be much more mission critical to your business, to your company, that hopefully by using Porter, you have the freedom to be able to focus on.
Yeah, or focus on product and innovation instead of like the infrastructure undifferentiated tasks, as you say, right?
Exactly. And I think in particular, we find that DevOps engineers often are the ones who understand this best, that they want to work on the things that they really care about, which might be security specific to what they're doing, networking configuration that is, again, more unique to the company, as opposed to setting up the same kind of infrastructure profile over and over, and also having to invest in then making it easier for developers to interact with that in the exact same way. That kind of undifferentiated heavy lifting is exactly what we're going after with Porter. And hopefully, yeah, we free up this bandwidth on the product and on the DevOps side.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned is Kubernetes and managing that. And I know that a big thing there is that they are doing such a fast clip of innovation that then there are upgrade requirements every 6 months or so. And that can be a lot for a DevOps team to keep up with, right? So how does Porter help with that? I know that you mentioned it a little bit, but I think it's like worth calling out.
So I guess first of all, just to echo what you said, there's been so much incredible adoption around Kubernetes, and it is such a rapidly evolving ecosystem. And we find there is a benefit and a drawback to that. The benefit being there's just incredible performance, incredible scalability, but the drawback is companies do have to introduce a little more DevOps overhead in order just to keep up with the evolving ecosystem. So what Porter can do is specifically just manage all of that work on your behalf. Do things like the Kubernetes cluster version upgrades, ensure that system components are updated and upgraded to be compatible with those new versions, and also even do things like ensure the underlying charts or manifests are going to be aligned. These are, again, all the kinds of things that you would normally have to have a DevOps person internally blocking out maybe a week, maybe a few weeks to do, that Porter can just handle automatically whenever a new Kubernetes version is released. So that is, I'd say, precisely the kind of generic heavy infra lifting that we're talking about that Porter can come in and help with.
So you're saying automatic upgrades, you don't have to worry about it, and your application will automatically be up to date with the latest version of EKS if you're using Porter.
Absolutely. And that's where we see this whole ecosystem headed. We think more and more companies using Kubernetes shouldn't have to worry about these kinds of implementation details if they don't want to. One of the ways we almost describe it is it's kind of like a distributed operating system. And you as a user of an operating system shouldn't have to freak out each time there's a new version released. You should just be able to kind of upgrade when you want to. Nothing's really changed on your end, and it is abstracted from you as far as you're concerned.
Nice.
So another customer story we can share is a startup actually called Govly. They were a YC company previously on Google Cloud actually. And similar to HomeLight, had been looking to migrate to AWS for a bit because there were products like Textract and other resources they wanted to take advantage of just on top of better pricing and better performance on the underlying infrastructure. But they were worried that moving to AWS would be this really heavy migration, especially because they were slightly locked in by Google Cloud's different hosting paradigms. We were able to come in though and just provide this very standardized layer that they could seamlessly move on to while still taking advantage of resources like Textract. And so literally within a day, actually, they were able to migrate all their infrastructure from GCP to AWS. And that's a pattern that we've seen pretty consistently, where a lot of companies around this kind of Series A, Series B stage that realize there's actually some service differences between these cloud providers, and they want to start leveraging more and more of the offering just that AWS has available. They're able to make that transition without having to leave a lot of dead weight on another platform.
So a migration in a day sounds like a pretty good use case. I mean, I think that's one of those things that teams are anxious about, right? Like, how long is this going to take? They don't want to delay like anything when it comes to production. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and of course I should caveat that if you're a massive enterprise, even using Porter, you might not move all your infrastructure within 24
fair.
hours. But absolutely, there are, again, sticking points like the database migration and other stateful things that might take a little more time. But in their particular case, they had just a lot of different microservices they were running. We were able to provide this consistent, stable landing zone for those applications. And yeah, Govly at least was able to move over within a day. So.
Didn't one of your customers have a consultant and they were in the process of thinking about hiring a DevOps engineer and then started to work with you?
Yeah, so that company is Carry Wealth, a Series A company that had a DevOps consultant they were working with to manage a few workloads on ECS. And again, Carry is another example of one of these startups that was really on the precipice of feeling like they didn't quite need a full DevOps engineer, but at the same time, their developers and their other engineers were being very bottlenecked by infrastructure management. And so they were considering, hey, do we need to just hire a full-time DevOps person in order to bring down our costs to manage this infrastructure? Ultimately, they were able to use Porter to achieve the same thing. And so we were able to get them on EKS, get it hyper-scalable to meet their different needs, deliver their kind of user traffic and volume in a reliable way. And they didn't end up needing to make that full-time DevOps hire. So that's another thing we've seen pretty consistently, where while for later stage companies, there inevitably comes a point where you need a DevOps engineer, you're going to want someone in-house who knows everything in and out, and hopefully Porter can help them at least focus on the tasks they care about. At a much earlier stage, you hopefully don't even have to think about bringing on that person full-time just yet if you're, let's say, a Series A company.
What has the impact been of the Global Startup Program for Porter?
Yeah, I think simply put, it has unlocked motions for us that would not have been possible alone. So in particular, we've now just been able to get more awareness among some account managers who now see an opportunity where they might have a client on Kubernetes that is now running on a version of Kubernetes that is literally about to be deprecated. So stuff is no longer going to be supported because they have not been able to keep up with the latest updates, just like we were talking about. And so more and more of those AMs are now aware of Porter, maybe able to introduce us at the right time and to let the client decide if this is something that makes sense. And it's largely through our go-to-market partner development manager that we've been able to kind of get that awareness. And I think working more and more closely with them just to navigate all the immense internal opportunities at AWS has just been essential.
What lessons as a founder can you share about partnering with AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a surprising willingness on the AWS side to work with startups. And that's honestly something that kind of shocked us in the beginning, to be frank. We didn't realize that AWS would be willing to work with a company at our stage, a early stage company that's helping to automate this kind of stuff for others. We just naively assumed it was this thing that only available to other enterprises that AWS would partner with at their scale. But there has been a radical willingness to, so long as our solution is delivering end value to those customers and actually helping them can automate all these tasks, if it's aligning sufficiently with the pain points that different AMs are hearing from their clients, we're able to come in and get those introductions. And so I would encourage founders to not necessarily dismiss the option, thinking that they're too early on or that they need to get a lot further and become this multiple 1,000-person company before AWS will even give them the light of day. I think there's an opportunity to do that much earlier on than you'd expect, and that has been honestly a revelation for us.
Love it. I mean, as long as you've got those customers, you have that product market fit, like we're here to help you navigate that, right? So it's been awesome to see Porter grow through that experience as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I so appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us today. Like, love hearing about Porter's growth. Super excited for the future as well.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.